G'day, I'm Sharon and welcome. If you've bought yourself an overlocker or serger and you're afraid to get it out of the box and use it, let's start by having a look at how we do a seam. I'm assuming your machine will be threaded straight out of the box. They often come threaded in white. I've got my machine threaded in the 4 colours that are indicated on the threading chart so that we can see what thread is doing what. To start with, this is a chain. I'm going to feed some fabric in, and I don't actually need to lift the foot on the machine. The feed dogs underneath will pick up the bottom fabric, and as long as the fabrics are not too slippery, it should pick up the top one as well. You'll notice as I did that, there were pieces of fabric being trimmed off at the side. Generally, you always want to have your machine trimming off, and it's this little piece in here, which is your upper knife, that's doing the trimming. Here's my chain at the beginning, and I have a chain at the end as well. These chains stop the knots from coming undone, but they're not particularly attractive. If I'm going to sew something else on that side, so for example this was a shoulder seam and I'm going to sew a sleeve onto it, then I lay my sleeve on top and those threads have gone. It won't ever come undone, but you don't have to worry about those threads. What that means is that while you're making a garment, a lot of these thread ends will resolve themselves as something else gets added to them, but there are a few that won't. If this were a side seam, then I've got this hanging off the end at the hem end. What can I do about it? I can use a couple of different methods to get rid of that, or when I do my hem, I might overlock around that edge and then fold it up, and that gets rid of that. Or I could do the thing that I had in my little tip for beginners a few weeks ago, where as I sewed this seam, I could fold things up, and that would have it hidden away inside the hem as well. Let's start having a look at how I can finish off this end. First way I can do it, get a darning needle, thread the chain through, and as long as you haven't cut it off too short, weave it back in here. And if you do that for a few centimeters up there, that's one way to get rid of it. Another way you can get rid of your end is with one of these. And I really don't know if these are available anymore. I've had this one for over 30 years. There's a little hook on this end of it, which is like a latch hook. But with this one, I would push the hook through the loops, grab hold of the end, oops, like that, and as I pull it back through, I've finished it off. This method requires you to be a little bit aware when you're starting of what you're doing so that you don't go too far. If I'm starting at the hem edge, I can feed the fabric in, and once the needles are in the fabric, lift the foot, bring this chain around to the front, put the foot back down and carry on sewing. After a little few centimeters, take it over to the right. That one is completely functional but doesn't look as good. And you can do it at the beginning of a seam, but you can't do it at the end. And this is the method I use most often. If you have a look at the chain, you can see that there is yellow and blue stitching here, and that's the needle threads, and they actually carry along straight through the middle of the chain. What I need to do is to pull those two threads, the yellow and blue ones, out. So they're the looper threads, the green and red ones. These are the needle threads. And then I just tie them off. It's actually quite hard to keep that in the viewfinder when it's highly magnified. So that's my usual method of ending the threads, and then I can just cut them off. There is one other method that I know of for ending off chains on overlocking or serging, and that's to use a product called Fray Stopper. Fray Stopper is a glue that is stable in water, so when you wash it, it doesn't come out. It's slightly squidgy forever. And if you cut things off and then put some Fray Stopper on it, it shouldn't come undone. So methods you can use: get a darning needle or one of these latch hooky things if you can find them anywhere. Use a pin to separate the threads out and then knot them, or perhaps use Fray Stopper. All sorts of ways you can finish off your endings and not have that piece of chain hanging off your garment. Hope you've learned something. See you next time.